Hey my friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. It's time for another face-off where I take two of my most recent test drives and I put them together so we can see how they compare face to face. What we've got here, the 2016 Ford F-150 Crew Cab 4x4 with the 5-liter V8 against the Chevrolet Crew Cab 4x4 V8, the 5.3. So let's see how they stack up. Alright guys, let's get started with this. First of all, I'm holding notes here because I'm doing this unscripted. We're just going to run through this thing very much like I do our mowdown videos, and the fans tell me they like the more relaxed vibe of it. So what we've got here with these two trucks is the 2016 F-150, the Crew Cab. It's a Lariat, and price-wise, it's pretty darn close to the LTZ that we've got in the Chevrolet. Also a 4x4. The big difference that really makes the two different is the Z71 package on the Chevrolet. That gives it a little bit more of an off-road vibe, but they also optioned the 20-inch wheels on it, which takes away from that off-roadness. And really, we're not getting into handling off-road here, so that difference between these two trucks, not really going to hammer on it too much. Now, the big thing with these two trucks is styling. Some trucks out there, the Nissan and the Ford, a lot of people think they look alike. You cannot look at these two trucks and say, they look just alike. They are very, very different. Ford and Chevy, they always have been. The Ford Lariat, we've got a lot of chrome. The bumper, the grille, pretty much everywhere they can put it. The wheels. The Chevrolet, the LTZ has a little bit more of a body color vibe, especially the grille and a lot of other bits and pieces, the bumpers and so forth. And when it comes to equipment, they're pretty darn similar. Pricing on these two, $55,000 for the Ford and $53,000 for the Chevy. So they're pretty closely lined up. They both got running boards. They've got the rear window that opens. They pretty much got all the same features as it relates to where they fall in the price. So we're really not comparing them too much for what you get for the money because they're just pretty closely related. Now the one thing I do want to get to, because it's a big comparison out there, especially with the bench racers and the brand loyalists, is aluminum versus steel. Chevrolet is making a lot of hay about this, especially with the latest round of commercials, and here's what I had to say about that. Now this one doesn't have a bed liner of any kind in it, but that is an option, and I highly recommend it because, well, if you're going to do like they do in the Chevy commercial where they dump a tractor load of cinder blocks in the back, just like they did next to the Chevy, well, Chevy made hay of the fact that the bed got all kinds of holes and dents in it when you dumped a tractor load of cinder blocks in the back. Now, nobody's going to do that, right? You're not going to spend $55,000 on a truck and drive it to a place and have a guy dump a bunch of rocks in the back with a tractor from high in the air. That's just silly. It's boo bait marketing for the bubbas. That's all it is. And if you do that, well, you're an idiot. Now, I got to hand it to Chevrolet. Their second comparison they did, where they knocked the toolbox down into the bed and the corner pokes a hole in the Ford and it does it in the Chevy, that's a bit more realistic a comparison. And, you know, my feeling on that is if you're going to buy a truck like this that costs this much money, you're going to put a bed liner in there. I would, especially if I was going to use it for work where it could get banged up, because if you ever go to sell that thing, nobody wants to buy a used truck with a banged up bed. That's just how it is. Now the interior on these two trucks, trim level very similar, therefore the interiors were also very similar, at least in terms of equipment. But here's how I came down on the interiors for both trucks. Sitting inside the F-150, this one's very nice when it comes to equipment level. There's leather seats, they're heated and ventilated up front, and there's heated seats in the back. The trim level, there's wood grain trim, a lot of chrome. It's got all the devices you could ever want here in the center stack, and it's pretty well laid out. And one of the things I like that Ford's done with all the controls is that they're right there where you can see them. The trailer brake controller is down here, a little bit lower. I usually like to have it a little close. Now sitting here, the view out is very much pickup truck. You can see just a little bit of the hood and the steering wheel and the controls on it, everything again within easy reach. These seats are comfortable. Now I do have power seats here and the passenger has power seats. This does have memory and it was pretty easy to find a comfortable place. It does have a power tilt and telescoping steering wheel on this trim grade. It is manual on the lower trim grades. One thing I will point out though, if you spend a lot of time around Fords, you're going to find that this is your typical Ford interior. And if you haven't spent time around Fords, what I mean is the material quality in here is sort of hit and miss. As you go around the interior, there's cheap materials here, there's good materials here, and as you look across the dash and you let your eyes sort of roam around, you see a lot of different finishes, a lot of parts that don't match the ones next to it, and you've got just sort of this hodgepodge of things that range from low quality all the way to high quality, and it really depends on the trim grade too. And it's just something that I've always noticed with Ford. It's like they have 30 different people working on the interior. Everybody comes to the table with their part. They have their own factory make it, they design their own pattern on it, and it all just sort of looks that way. From behind the wheel, this is a pretty comfortable truck. These seats are adjustable in almost every way, as is the steering wheel. So getting a seating position here is not going to be a hard thing for most people. And we've got a few short people in our office. They didn't have a hard time either. Now, the big thing about trucks for me is practicality, right? Because even though we've got all these features here, and that's great, if it's not practical, if it's not usable every day, that's a big deal. And here I think they've done a good job. There's lots of storage here inside the console, big cup holders. There's a big deep storage well here for your phone, whatever it might be. They've got a ton of ports here. There's 2 USB, 2 12-volt, and then there's a 110 outlet right there where you can get to them. I like that. And then all the switches for everything important, all of your controls for your lighting, your traction control, the hill descent control, all of those things right there. Now this also has the trailer brake controller, and they've got it right up here on the left, up high where you can see it and reach it, not kind of hidden down here where, quite honestly, if you're towing a trailer and you're going down the hill and you're thinking, boy, I need my trailer brakes, do you really need to be kind of hunting and pecking for it down here under the steering wheel someplace? No, you don't. Now, a couple other little features. This is fully loaded, so it has a wireless phone charger. They've placed it right here on top of the console. It's not in the way, and I really like that location because if you've got somebody in the back and they want to use it, yet they don't want to have their phone tethered or far away where they can't reach it if it rings, that's a nice spot because everybody in the truck can reach it. I think that's pretty cool. Now in the end game, I have to tell you, I like the Chevrolet interior just a little bit more than the Ford because of what I said there about the Ford quality when it comes to the variables. Ford, you have cheap things, you have expensive things, all put together in one. The Chevrolet, not everything was up to the top quality standards, but everything was consistent. So when you sit in the truck and you live in the truck, everything's on the same level. You don't feel like, boy, they cheaped out on this part, but that's really nice. And I like that. Consistency I like quite a bit, and I really thought it was very comfortable. So even though the design of the Chevrolet, not exactly, well, honestly, I think the Ford might have a more appealing look to it inside, but if I were to be living in a truck, I do like that Chevrolet just a little bit better because it's just consistent. So there's that. Now powertrain. A lot of you guys are probably going to whine that I didn't have the bigger engine than the Chevy, so it was fair for horsepower, but I'm looking at the fact that we've got 2 V8s here, very similar in size. We've got the 5-liter V8 with the Ford, and we've got the 5.3 with the Chevrolet. These engines are very different, and here's how they stack up in specs. Now, as I said at the outset, I was pretty excited they gave me a 5-liter V8 to test because even though I like the 3.5 and the 2.7-liter EcoBoost, nothing beats the sound of a V8 in a pickup truck. Plus, it makes it so much easier to compare to the other brands pickups that I've driven lately that also have V8s. Now this one, 5-liter V8, 385 horsepower and 387 pound-feet of torque. And in this truck, that makes it the mid-level option because that 3.5 V6, even though it has less horsepower, it has a lot more torque at 420 pound-feet. And for 2017, it's going to have even more at 470. So mid-range, that's where this is at. Now, this does come with a 6-speed automatic transmission, available both 2- and 4-wheel drive. And here, we've got 4-wheel drive. So the big question with this 5-liter V8 is, how does it go? Woo! Now that's what I'm talking about. Nice V8 growl. That's what it does. Now the EcoBoost, yeah, it's a little bit faster, has more kick in the back, but this has got that nice V8 rumble that really makes it feel like a good old-fashioned American pickup. And it's got pickup. Not the fastest of the bunch, but it's got plenty of speed going on. The EPA rates this engine at up to 21 mpg highway and 17 mpg combined. That's what the EPA sticker says on this truck. And before I started fooling around here, during my week with it on the highway and in town, I actually got 17, which puts it pretty much middle of the class for mpg, but it's as promised, which is always a good thing. Under the hood is a 5.3-liter Ecotec V8, which this year is now available in the LTZ with an 8-speed automatic transmission. This, with the engine's variable valve timing, direct injection, and variable displacement, contribute to a higher fuel economy to go with its 355 horsepower. Well, so what you just heard there is Chevrolet's way of tuning the sound of this vehicle. If you like the Chevy truck and you want some exhaust note, you're going to have to get yourself some Flowmasters. But what I found is power is adequate here. It's not quite as much as the Toyota Tundra, obviously, and Ford's EcoBoost 3.5, even though the horsepower isn't that much different. That engine does give you a little bit more of a push in the back than this does. And in the Ram, well, they're 5.7 Hemi at least. It gives you a little bit more drama, so I don't know how it actually clocks out if you're timing the thing for acceleration, but that engine certainly makes you feel like you're blowing and going. This one just feels a little bit more relaxed. The new 8-speed transmission behaves well most of the time, but can seem to hunt around a bit in city driving, but not too badly. It brings the EPA fuel economy to 15 mpg city, 21 mpg highway, and 17 mpg combined. I was able to achieve 20 mpg in my week with it combined city and highway. Not bad at all. Now, when it came to how these two performed, and I look at them and I compare them in my head, I really felt the Ford felt a lot faster. Definitely had a lot more urgency when you put your foot on the gas. And that really comes across for two reasons. One, the engine's more powerful. It just is. The second is that truck's a lot lighter. The Ford is 634 pounds lighter as tested than the Chevrolet. So even it's got more power and it's pushing a lighter truck around. Now, when it came to fuel economy, as you noted, 17 in the Ford, 20 in the Chevrolet. Chevrolet's heavier, but that engine isn't tuned out quite as high. So because of that, and the fact the Chevy has direct injection, it has the variable displacement, it's got the 8-speed transmission, it had a big advantage when it came to fuel economy. That Ford V8, yeah, it's faster, yeah, it has more power, but it's a highly tuned engine that's a little bit smaller, so that always plays a little bit when it comes to fuel economy. So the Ford's faster, the Chevy gets better gas mileage, but at the end of the day, the power is not that different. So there's that. Now, handling. Two different worlds here, and I'm not really going to hammer on handling a lot because of the fact that these aren't really matched up that well. Ford, I had 18-inch wheels, I had the standard suspension, the Chevrolet had 20-inch wheels, the LTZ with that Z71 package, stiffer suspension. Those Z71 shocks are very stiff, so on the highway, the Chevy felt more substantial. It was heavier, a lot quieter, I'd say. It just felt more refined and solid. Out on the back roads, the Ford, I think it felt better because it had a softer suspension, it had more rubber on those wheels, and especially when I got off-road, the Z71 really beat you to death because in this particular case, 20-inch wheels. You don't want lower profile tires if you're going to be off on a farm road or out in the bush going crazy out there. You want more rubber. Any vehicle that's going to be off-roading, you want smaller wheels, bigger tires. And so that's just the way these two trucks were options. So to me, handling is really kind of a push. I will say that on the road, the Ford felt lighter because it is, and therefore a little bit more athletic. But when it came to just sitting in a truck and being comfortable and going down the highway, I think the Chevrolet's got the edge there. Now, quality. Quality is always the last big measure of any test drive I do, and I got to tell you, both of these trucks are American, which means body panels that don't fit. The Ford had all kinds of, things that don't line up, and so did the Chevrolet. So there wasn't really a clear winner when it came to quality, at least on the exterior. And as I said earlier, I do think the Chevrolet had a bit of an edge on the inside because the interior, not all the best materials in the world, but at least they're consistent across the board. No matter where you look, it's all the same thing. If there is an edge, Chevy probably gets it because of the interior. Now, when I do these face-offs, everyone always asks, what would you buy with your own money? Well, first of all, I'm not a brand loyalist. I don't have a dog in this race. If I were out shopping for a new full-size truck, I'd probably honestly look at everything. I really would. I'm one of those people that, while I've owned Ford, I've owned Chevy, I could go either way on these two. The one thing I tell you is that I think the edge does go for the Chevy for me, and that's simply because of the fact that, as I said, I like the interior, and that's where I live most of the time. So it gets better fuel economy, and for all-around better vehicle, and because I don't tow, maybe I'm not looking at the tow ratings between these two, I just really felt that the Chevrolet of these two was a better all-around vehicle, at least for my eyes and my money. If you want a far more detailed review on either one of these trucks, down below are links to both of the full test drives I did on each one of these things, and that's a way to really drill down into a lot more detail than I got into here. What I do want you to do is stick around for a couple more minutes, because at the end of this, I've got a little bit about brand loyalty, because I watch your comments when we do these face-offs, and it's clear that there's Ford people out there and Chevy people out there, and you guys would shoot each other with assault rifles if you could, but here you have to just do comments. But watch the end of this thing, and maybe it's a little bit of a PSA. Anyway, thanks for watching. Little personal story here. I talked a little bit about brand loyalty there in the end, and I bring that up because it's pretty important to a lot of people, especially American brands, especially when it comes to trucks. And I grew up in a Ford family, right? I mean, we always had Fords all the time, and that's all anyone ever drove. And if they didn't drive a Ford, they was just stupid. They didn't know nothing. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because, well, that's where I grew up. My mom, one time, she broke the cardinal rule. She went out and bought a Buick behind my dad's back, and boy, did she ever pay for that. That car was a pile of crap. It broke all the time, it was recalled all the time, spent most of its life in the shop. And so, like a good wife, when it came time to turn that in and get a new vehicle, she got a Ford. So all was good in life again. Dad was happy, Mom was happy because now she had a Ford again, and life went on. Well, when I grew up, I went out and I was a rebellious child. I bought a Chevrolet Tahoe. And then I bought another one. And then after that, I got a Hummer H2. And there was a Corvette in there somewhere too. And my parents, they were like, where do we go wrong? They're pulling their hair out going, this kid's screwed up. One day, my mom calls me up and she says, it's time to get rid of my Ford Expedition. I've already had 3 of them. What do you think of that Chevrolet Avalanche? Well, I told her. Next time they came to visit, she's driving a new Chevy Avalanche. My dad's sitting in the passenger seat. She loved that thing, and it turned out to be a very good truck for her. The moral of the story is, don't let brand loyalty blind you. Don't let it limit your life, man. Have some fun. Inhale. You might just find out that there's more out there to life than just that one little thing that you always just do. Anyway, if you like the test drive, click on the link right here and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We test drive 1, sometimes 2 vehicles every week. Plus, we have a new video just like this almost every day. There's always something new. So stay tuned.